both fundraisers and grant makers to fund initiatives to test new innovative approaches at better supporting workers and employers, and really to share our best practices and results across the system as we learn things. The types of projects that we fund really, this is our impact model. You'll notice at the middle of this is worker voice and community voice, because we realize, that communities across the state are all very different, right? Each island, each community has different needs, different challenges. And so we recognize the importance in engaging community and understanding what are the problems we're trying to solve. And then we really fund projects that cover, some combination of three impact areas. We strengthen pathways, which is really around funding programs that provide learners with more options, visibility, and support to gain the skills they need to obtain the quality job of their choice. We strengthen communities. We fund community-based organizations that, support workers in career navigation or support services that enable learners and workers to succeed in gaining jobs in the community of their choice. Because if people can remain in their communities and get a good job, communities are stronger, small business grows, we have more jobs. And we really think that's what a good portion of this success could look like. And finally, we strengthen systems. And so we invest in, we see ourselves as a place for collaboration with government, with different stakeholders in the system to kind of incubate and test innovative ideas that we can fund. And then ultimately, as things work, can be adopted by the system, to create more equitable opportunity for everybody. And so when we started this work, my background prior to doing this was actually in data science and data analytics. And so you're going to see a lot of data in this conversation. We started with the numbers, and I don't think these numbers are going to shock anyone. The challenges that folks in Hawaii face, almost half of households in our state don't earn enough money to cover the cost of basic survival budget. That was, work done by the Aloha United Way with their ALICE work. And a large portion of this, if we look at job growth over a 10-year period, and this was pre-COVID, these numbers, it's gotten more challenging, I think, since the pandemic. But, there was job growth, but, that was in low-wage jobs primarily. Middle-wage jobs and high-wage jobs actually decreased over this 10-year period. And so you can see, folks aren't earning enough to survive, and there aren't obvious places, obvious jobs to steer people towards. And then from the employer side, across the state, there are 73 available workers for every 100 open jobs. And so employers are feeling the pain too. And so after looking at the numbers, we engaged, we kind of took initially kind of your traditional economic approach to this, right? Thinking about, workforce development as this supply side, right? How are training providers creating workers with skills? And how does that align with the demand side, right? What are employers looking for? What are the jobs they're having challenges filling? And trying to make these two sides, meet in the middle. And so speaking to training providers, they reported a need for more living wage jobs, more training programs, better coordination with businesses to align on skills. But they also acknowledged that workers, they face a lot of challenges in upskilling, right? They lack support services or the time to attend classes because of a lack of childcare or transportation and things like that. And because of this, actually, this was supposed to say they actually were not optimistic about the prospect for high quality jobs in Hawaii when we spoke to them. And then speaking to employers, they see also a need for better coordination between training providers to make sure that in-state candidates, have the skills that are needed for jobs, because traditionally they're not seeing that, which forces them, in their words, to hire candidates from out of state, which often leads to, high turnover rates when these candidates either, can't afford to live here themselves or, just end up, moving somewhere else afterwards. And so this data, talking to these stakeholders, it didn't really give us, it gave us a clearer sense that the problem was complex, but it didn't point out a clear solution. And so from my data background, when the data is not telling you something conclusive, or it seems to be providing contradictory results, in my experience, the best thing, oftentimes that means you're asking the wrong questions, or there's data that you don't have that might help provide the answer. And so with this, we realize there's a third stakeholder, and that's the worker themselves. Can we speak to workers to learn from their side? What are the challenges they're facing? What are they looking for in a good job? Because again, looking at the data of the 755 occupations that currently exist in Hawaii, we looked at how many of them pay a wage that can sustain a resident and one other family member, and how many of these have more than 100 annual job openings. And of those 755, only 26 met this criteria. And so that says to us, right, that merely directing learners down the existing pathways, while that's important, it will help some people get good jobs, it may not lead to the desired outcome, equitable access to good jobs for everyone, because, simply put, there just are not enough good jobs by the traditional definition for us to build pathways to. And while that's, a little concerning, it also provides us with an opportunity. And that's really where this work was based. So if good jobs as commonly defined don't exist yet, we do have this unique opportunity to speak to workers, to speak with communities, to speak with other stakeholders, to learn and help define a new definition of a good job that really raises up the needs of workers and communities and aligns those with industry, employers, education, and policymakers. And we think that by doing this, right, we're going to have an opportunity. We're going to create together a human-centered education workforce system that provides the opportunity for quality, meaningful work for families sustaining wages. It provides job seekers with the agency to choose a career path based on criteria that's important to them. And it would provide flexibility to identify and choose a training pathway that works best for you, serves you regardless of where you live and where you are in your career and what your needs are. So that's really our vision and why we set out to do this work. So in order to do it, we partnered with the Islander Institute, which is a nonprofit organization that has over 20 years of experience really working in Hawaii in community. And they've led projects in a variety of different sectors: community health, education, INA initiatives, economic development. But really the common theme and why we thought that they would be great partners is that in all of their work, they elevate community voice because of their commitment and their belief that we need to develop solutions that are consistent with local values in order to create a vision for Hawaii that really includes everyone. And so they worked with us to identify community-based organizations, and they extended invitations to them throughout the state to gather participants around a meal, to host a kind of a talk story session, to learn in each community. And really, this strategy had two strengths, right? It creates a level of comfort so that people can go deep quickly and share honestly because they're with people that they trust, with an organization that they trust. And it provides insights into the broader community because, as individuals are sharing their stories, the collective behavior of the group is revealed as well. And that reflects the attitudes and the values, not just of the people in the room, but of the community as a whole. And so, I won't read through this whole list, but as you can see, we worked with organizations on 4 islands throughout the state, really trying to get both a diversity of kind of demographic communities as well as geographic, different age groups, different geographies. And the Islander Institute, as they were facilitating these sessions, these are the questions that they really just set out for the group. They didn't lead too much, but they left them with these questions and kind of just let the conversation flow naturally around these 5 themes. And so once they hosted these conversations, they gathered the results and put them in a report that we've released on our website. And we'll if we could drop the link in the chat, that would be great. You all can access the full report. But over the next few slides, I really just want to share what we learned from this work and dig into each of these 3 themes around what communities say makes a good job in Hawaii. So people in Hawaii describe a good job as one that helps achieve 3 deeper goals. One, it allows people to be and remain home in Hawaii. That means having enough to survive and thrive, but in a way that allows a person to deepen their roots in the islands. Second, it allows them to make a contribution. A good job enables someone to fulfill their obligations, be that to their family, their responsibility to their coworkers and to others. That could be to their colleagues, that could be to their community, that could be to Hawaii as a whole. But a good job makes a contribution. And finally, a good job allows a person to have good health. It supports positive self-concept, personal health, be that physical or mental health, and it allows people to sustain their relationships with others. So, I don't think there's going to, based on what people put in the chat as you all came in, it doesn't seem like this is going to be a surprise to anyone, but we thought that there's a lot of value in collecting, what people across Hawaii and across our communities say makes a good job, because there's a power in seeing these things in writing, things that we all know, right, as residents, as members of our community, but things that sometimes get lost, when we're thinking about jobs, when we're thinking about a lot of the existing narratives around work, around a good job is more money. And so to dig in a little bit, what does it mean that a good job allows you to be home in Hawaii? And so, as I was mentioning, a lot of the kind of the Western narratives on work, the prevailing definition of a good job often says, well, a good job is one that, is based on how much money it pays. And we all know, that because of the high cost of living here, it's clear that insufficient pay presents a serious challenge to folks in Hawaii. And so a job that doesn't pay enough would not be a good job. But it's worth noting that in these conversations, few people mentioned that higher pay in and of itself is the characteristic of a good job. Instead, as they talked about jobs that were good jobs, they really focused on the expense side of things, and that a good job is one that provides the ability to meet those costs. And so a job is really a place-based goal and what the cost of living is to sustain remaining in a specific community rather than an economic goal. And I think that's really revealed in one of the quotes that we learned in this work. People who stay in Hawaii aren't trying to get rich. If they wanted to get rich, they would choose to leave Hawaii. They are staying in Hawaii for something else, and we should be cultivating that something else. A resident of Hawaii who we spoke to, who had left for school on the continent, but had returned to Hawaii, said, I made a choice. I can either give back to a community that isn't mine, or I can go back home and lessen the struggle for my family. That meant more to me than whatever material goods. It's much more worthwhile to give back to my community where I have roots. I'd much rather struggle alongside my family. And so I think this feeds into the second qualification for a good job, is that it allows a person to make a contribution. So, most frequently in conversations, this meant, fulfilling one's obligation to their family. And so that shows us that a job can either fulfill this through, it could be a higher paying job that allows them to support their family, but it could also be a lower paying job that either has better benefits or is closer to home. If folks are having to drive an hour a day to show up in person to a job, it's taking away from being a caregiver to their children, to their parents who might live at home with them. And so it just broadens the definition of what a good job can be and what it means to contribute. And then secondarily, also, meaningful work is where the actions contribute something positive. And that could be to a team, to a cause, to the community, or to Hawaii as a whole. And so this really speaks to good jobs that are things like childcare, things like nonprofit organizations, things like teaching that may not, by some of those prevailing narratives, pay enough to be considered a good job. But it really tells us, how can we lift this framework up to lift up these jobs that people want, that our communities need, and really celebrate them as good jobs and help to work with the system to make sure that they are paying enough to allow people to remain here in Hawaii. And so a couple of quotes around this, here's a mother in Maui who had changed jobs multiple times. They'd had a job at a hotel that was paying enough, but because of the commute time, they couldn't keep it because it was impacting their quality of life. And so I think what really stands out here is that the complex economics, right, that people are dealing with as they're moving from job to job, as they're making these decisions to say that there's a trade-off. By taking a job that paid less, right, they could be home and still be there with their kids, even if it didn't pay as much. And then for this worker in Kauai, they said, my job is part of my identity. I want to be proud of what I do, and I want to give back to my community. So these are just some of the ways, that people are talking about what good jobs can look like as they contribute back to community and back to their families. And finally, the third category was a good job allows a person to have and sustain good health. And so participants recognize that a job can either help or it can hinder one's sense of well-being. On the positive side, a good job, people talked about good jobs that really served as a foundation for a healthy sense of self. Places where, if treated with, respect and autonomy, they really grew a healthy sense of self through their job and could, have their job be a part of their identity in a way that contributed to good health. And so there were stories of jobs that helped people see that, that they were good at something, that they could learn, they could grow, they could develop mastery and really get that sense of fulfillment. And that, these categories closely relate, right? Because that's also about how one contributes. And then specifically when we had conversations with some of the younger generations, Gen Z, they're saying time and time again that they're seeking jobs that put both mental and emotional health on equal footing with their physical health. A job could pay well, but if it's going to have a poor work-life balance and affect their mental health, they're going to look for something else. And so this healthcare manager on Maui said, I was always someone led by passion rather than money. For now, what's really important is flexibility and understanding and quality of life. Being able to attend to all of the things that keep myself healthy and well. Being able to have choice on what you do and when you do it is what makes a good job. And this participant from Key Project said, success is not having to run from my mistakes anymore. Being proud of the person I see in the mirror every morning and accepting the good and the bad of who I am. It's not about finances. It's about having a sense of direction, purpose, in what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. So this is really what we learned from our work, and I encourage everyone to read the report and what we want to do next. We've made it public, and now we're trying to figure out what we do next with this. This report really reflects in one place what workers are looking for, what communities are looking for in a good job. But as a collaborative, we want to work with stakeholders to understand, what's needed from the system to support workers in this way. And so, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague Mona, who's going to talk a little bit about how we put the learnings of this report into action. To answer this question, how might we work together to create workplace cultures that are responsive and understand, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander values so that all workers feel welcomed in being their whole selves at work.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, aloha, everyone. Happy holidays. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about the Hawaiʻi Worker Equity Lab, which is our foundational pillar of our organization. Sometimes we call it the Worker Equity Lab, or we just call it the lab. So the lab pretty much is a encouraging, virtual, conceptual, really engaging space for communities, organizations, stakeholders, and partners to come together to really test out ideas here in Hawaii that pertain to the workforce development of our communities. And so there's kind of really three main points that I want to stress here of what the lab is about, because we're going to refer to them throughout our presentation. But really, we learn about the challenges and unique experiences from our stakeholders by bringing them together, including their voices in the design process, and then also helping them and helping us learn about our things that help us. Sorry, guys, I'm like, hope you don't hear that background noise. Someone is using the lawnmower at the most inopportune time. anyways, including their voices in the design process, and then really using this framework called humor-centered design thinking, which is, I think, not a new term, and people may or may not be familiar with it, but it goes through a experimental iteration process of 5 phases where we're prototyping ideas, testing them, learning them, challenging assumptions, and also looking for ways to really collaborate together. And then using this space as a convening space, a community of learning, a community of collaborating with each other across sectors and across disciplines. So in November, we actually launched an inaugural cohort. We identified specific organizations that we thought could add their wealth of knowledge, expertise, and kuleana and insights into really kind of testing out what we can work and develop here in the lab as a first design team, and then also what we can push forward in the next few months as an inaugural project. So we had 3 full days of interactive workshopping. The organizations that we worked with are listed here. We were housed in the space of the American Job Center Work Hawaii Division. We also had the Chamber of Commerce sort of represent that employer voice. And then we also worked with the Community Colleges Network with their Good Job Challenges initiative, and a community-based organization of We Are Oceania. What this really did was we brought these groups together, talked about different ideas of how we can further develop and test these ideas of how might we work together in really elevating worker voice and workplace solutions. How do we work with employers to fulfill those needs? How do we include the employees' voices in designing good jobs? And also looking at the data and the report that we were able to get from our partners from the Islander Institute. We had our national fund. So we also, as a local organization, we kind of fall under and partner with a larger organization called the National Fund of Workforce Innovation Solutions. And so they were also here to help support and facilitate this workshop. And from this, we got 2 project ideas that the group actually developed themselves. And the first one was underlying the question, like, how might we work with businesses to create a more robust and fair workplace that understand and really support Pacific Islander values, so that this population and other vulnerable communities feel welcome in being their whole selves. And then the second project was, how do we utilize the core values of Pacific Island culture to recruit and train Pacific Islander youth? And how does this next generation contribute to the workforce moving forward? It was a really full interactive experience. We had so much diversity in the room. We had a wealth of knowledge. And right now we're in the prototyping phase of really developing and fleshing out these ideas and then launching the projects over the next few months. So this is one of our inaugural pilots for the lab. And also we're also looking forward to just really kind of using this framework and this space and this community to engage with one another. So we also welcome your input and kuleana if there's another project or idea that really comes to mind in helping to elevate these workforce issues, areas, and helping to identify. We welcome you to share that with us. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And this kind of last just gives a representation of the cohort that we worked with. And kind of what we came up with was really, how do we pool our forces and our community resources together to really identify and strengthen pathways and systems to creating that equity and easier access to good jobs in Hawaii. Not just for Pacific Island workers, but for everyone. So yeah, that's a little bit about the lab. If you're interested in learning more or engaging or talking more, my contact information will be at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Mona. Yeah, as Mona mentioned, the lab, we really see it as a place for convening. And so even today's conversation, I think, we're kind of all inviting you into this innovation space to work together to use the rest of our time to really think through, what we've developed here with this report, right? It's a framework that's rooted, in what workers are looking for. But we'd like to develop similar frameworks from the training provider perspective, from the employer perspective, to how we support workers in this way. And so we've got a little bit of an interactive exercise. But before we do breakout rooms, and maybe we'll just pause for a second, give folks a chance if there are any burning questions, anything that was unclear or you'd like a little bit more information on about anything we've shared so far. Maybe we could take one or two questions before we break out into our exercise. All right. Well, if there are no questions, do we want to do breakout rooms, Mona?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to ask that. We'll break out into 2 rooms. Where's my breakout room? Oh, here we go. And we'll let you choose. Matt, do you want to share what the
Yeah.
mural board looks like? Well,
Yeah, while you're doing that, I can definitely share.
yeah.
So we're going to break up into 2 breakout rooms. One will be, and I think we'll give folks the option to select one room or the other. One would be the employer framework. And so just going to have an open conversation from the employer perspective. And anybody, I think, any of our organizations can be employers. So thinking about, in a workspace, what can an employer provide that enables someone to feel home in Hawaii, to make a contribution or to have good health. And then similarly, we've got a Miro board here from the training provider side of things. What can we do to design training programs that meet these needs? And so Mona and I will facilitate the folks in each of these breakout rooms. We'll spend about, I don't know, want to say about 15 minutes, and then we'll pull folks back and share what we've learned.
Okay, I believe both rooms are open. Matt, I think you'll be in one.
Yep, I'm going to go ahead
and I'll be in room 2. Well, that went by super fast.
Yeah. Did I do the math wrong? I feel like that was a very quick 15
wow.
minutes.
Right. I thought we had more, but thanks, Pua. I got your last note and I will include that in our board.
Wonderful. Well, do we want to take a couple minutes and just sort of debrief and share what each of our groups came up with? I'll share my screen and pull up both boards. Does anybody from the group that I was facilitating with the employers want to, I don't know, give a kind of a 30-second view of maybe of our conversation and some of the themes that emerged when we were talking? We definitely focused a lot on the to have good health portion of the framework.
I can summarize real quick. So we focused on the good health aspect and kind of what employers can do to ensure that employees have better health, kind of starting with setting clear expectations and then also ensuring that managers lead by example. So encouraging people to take PTO so that they're better rested, realistic expectation about how much they should be contributing, or what expectations there are when people go from hourly to salary. Are you now expected to work overtime, weekends? And then one interesting concept that we spoke about is how in Australia, people get paid or get accrued leave the longer they stay. And then also they're getting a higher payout for actually taking that leave, again, just to encourage people to take PTO and take care of their health. Yeah.
Thanks, Marin. Yeah, it was a great conversation, and I think we came up with a lot of, pretty low lift. A lot of these are behavioral, right? In ways in which we can change workplace culture to be more responsive to kind of some of the themes from this report. So thanks to everyone in my group who contributed to this. I'll move up here to what you all came up with.
Yeah, and similarly, I'd also like to invite anyone from our group if they want to share highlights or themes, or I can also do that as well. Okay, I'm gonna jump in if or
You do it, want to go for it.
Okay, are you sure, Mike? But I feel like we lightly touched on all three elements with at least the training side of things, to be home in Hawaii, make a contribution in health. But what we really focused on was more like the education system and the pathways leading up to the workforce kind of topic. So we talked about, or it was shared that for students, we're really looking at not just like the conventional style of guidance and mentorship, but really encouraging and creating a constellation of support for students. And that way they're connected to a larger network or support group to get that wraparound support that they need. Because as we know in times of today, there's many different challenges and everyone has unique needs. And so recognizing that and also trying to customize the support that way. And then also with the younger kids, say K to 12 and leading up to high school, just really kind of infusing examples of where they could be real world settings of recognizing their strengths and then maybe cultivating that and strengthening that. And then helping them see different pathways and options where, one, if you want to go on higher education, or two, if you want to do go straight into the workforce. But how does that translate into resume, the job interview process, and really giving the youth and the would-be workers of tomorrow the tools in order to be successful in whatever pathway that they choose. So we touched a little bit about upskills and training and certifications. And then we also talked about overall how I think really the training programs, initiatives here in Hawaii could lead to that. But it's all through partnership and networking and really cultivating those nodes of support. So how did I do, guys? Anyone else want to add anything to that?
I'll toss in the other thing too, is what Julie mentioned. Here's the thing what Julie mentioned, which is awesome too. It was networking, going out in the community, getting to talk to a variety of people with a variety of different occupations. Hence, basically, what I wrote about too, so I agree 100% on that one. But the other thing too is the soft skills that the students will need when they get in the real world and how to move the ball forward, which ties into what Pooh was mentioning as well too. So it's not being told, not being trained, and if we could help the students understand about communication, leadership, leading with examples, everything from A through Z on the soft skills communication standpoints, as well as the networking. That stuff's tough. I mean, people don't learn that until they get out in the real world. And so the earlier they understand they have to do it, and the earlier they understand how important it is, the better. So that's one thing too, Mona, we went over, which was really cool, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we didn't have time to go over this, but like I was going to ask our group, and maybe even this plenary format, if you have certain initiatives that kind of fall along these lines, we'd love to hear more about that and see how this fits within this framework.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so thank you. I mean, this was a great discussion. Thank you all for your all's participation in that and this. And what I think, I think it's been implied by this whole conversation, but let's just name it, right? I think, when we develop a system, right, that shows kids early on, right, that the values and the ways that they think about a good job matter, that they have the, there's a different way they can think about it. They're going to be more likely to find things that they engage with, and more likely to find jobs that they like, and help employers, find employees that they can fill positions and keep people in those positions longer, because the jobs meet people where they are. And so, as next steps, as Mona said, please, I'm going to do these in reverse order for some reason, because that's just feeling backwards today. If you're doing something already that aligns nicely with this framework, like please reach out to Mona. Her email. Oh, that is not her email address. I am.
There you go. I was in the middle of like, wait, I tried to update it, but I'm like, oh, maybe a different.
Hold on a
slide
second. Take 2. There we go. You updated it. All right.
Thank you.
Reach out to Mona at hawaiiwork.org. We'd love to hear about it. We are building our toolkit, for employers, for training providers. We want to design, documents and resources that are going to support these other stakeholders and meeting workers where they are. And so we'd love your feedback. We'd love to share anything that's already happening, to have these case studies of, when people make these changes and are adapted to the needs of workers, things work better. If you could, fill out our, we have a quick Google form survey. We'd love to hear what about today was useful, and would just love to hear, get your contact information if you'd like to stay engaged with us. If we could drop the link in the chat for that survey as well, that would be great. And then we shared the link to the full report, but if you can use the QR code in this slide as well, feel free to grab that report, share it with people who might be interested, and reach out to us with your questions, comments, and reactions.
Yes, and thanks for joining us. I know it's like the end of year, end of season, there's a lot going on, but we're honored to have you in this space and seeing your smiling faces and also contributing to this work. So thank you. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Amen.
Aloha, everyone. Happy holidays.
Much aloha, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Mike.
Nice to meet you, Mona. Aloha.